Okay, bore da a croeso I cyfarfod cynllunio. Good morning and welcome to the Planning Committee meeting on the 6th of October 2021. I will straight away hand over to the legal officer because I know he's got some things to say about it. It's Tim Dillon, who is he's actually at home at the moment. He's got COVID, so it would be nice to him. He's not in the chamber with us today, so you just might need to. We might just take a few seconds more when we go over to the legal officer at various points in the day. Okay, but I'll just talk to him about. He's going to talk to us about the declarations of interest.
Corridor members, good morning. Yeah, without further ado, we're moving on to agenda item number 2 in relation to declaration of interests. Members will be aware of the requirements under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interests in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or indeed a prejudicial interest in today's business. All declaring requires to provide to a personal interest or
we can't hear you. Can you just maybe turn your camera off? It's just getting a bit crackly then.
My apologies. I don't know how much that was captured then. Shall I start again from the start?
Yeah.
With belt and braces. My apologies. Members will be aware of the requirements under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interests should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or indeed a prejudicial interest in today's business. Excuse me. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it is a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest is required to leave the meeting for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and any vote. Excuse me. If a personal and prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which is available from the committee support staff. Diolch. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you. Okay, just before we go into declarations of interest, do apologies. I've had apologies from Councillor Mervyn Parry, and I know a couple of people that have emailed me just to say that they're leaving at sort of different times during the morning, so that's all fine. But do we have, if you want to unmute, if there's any other apologies for this morning?
Councillor Tony Thomas.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brian Jones. So Councillor Tony Thomas. Okay, so we'll go into declarations of interest. So declarations of interest, Councillor Christine Marston.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say on item 5, it's a personal and I know the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I've got a couple of other hands raised. So we've got Councillor Tina Jones.
Item 9, personal and prejudicial. I've got a parcel of land that is hopefully going in the LDP.
Okay, thank you. And I've got Councillor Anne Davis.
Diolch yn fawr. Could I declare an interest, personal interest? My son-in-law is employed out at Ysbyty Llanllwyd. Do I need to declare an interest? It's for the Optic Nursing Home application.
Okay, so that would be for agenda item number 7. Can you just say what the nature of the interest was again? Because I didn't quite hear it.
Well, I'm not sure if I need to declare it, but my son-in-law is a doctor at Llanllwyd. Okay. Would that personal interest maybe? No?
I'm just.
It's not a Betty Cadwallader application, is it? The doctors are involved, but he's not involved personally.
Okay. I'll just bring Tim Dillon for that one. Tim,
thank you, Councillor. It does appear that that is a personal interest, not a prejudicial interest.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Cynghorydd Meiri Clwyd Davies.
Diolch, Mr Cadeirydd. Eitem 8, mae'r trefniant y môr yn dod mewn golwg I ni lle da ni'n byw yn y cae sydd ar draws y ffordd i'r amlosgfa, i'r gogledd felly. Dwi wedi llenwi'r ffurlen, dydy o mond o rhywbeth personol, dwi'n nabod neb sydd I wneud hefo fo. Dwi'n digwydd bod nabod y ffarmwr, ond nabod ydw I a ddim byd mwy. Dyna pam dwi'n datgan diddordeb personol. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay, diolch yn fawr. Councillor Brian Jones.
I'm looking for advice whether I need to declare an interest. Item 7, I'm registered at Clarence House in Rail, and Dr. Simon Dobson is a doctor there. He's not my doctor, but sometimes he does walk through on the rare occasions I go there and says, hello, how are you? So on the basis of that, do I need to declare any sort of interest?
Okay, I'll just bring in Tim Dillon.
Thank you, Councillor. It appears, given the nature of that would be knows you from CS and
turn your camera off again. Sorry, I think you said it's probably a personal interest, but we didn't quite hear.
So yeah, sorry. Yeah, from what you've said, it appears that is a personal interest.
Okay, so suggest that Councillor Brian Jones would still fill in a form, yeah?
To be safe, yes.
Certainly,
Thank you.
certainly, Chair. As I said, he's not my doctor, but I have seen him walking through the building, and he says hello.
Okay, there we go. Councillor Ellie Chard.
And like Councillor Brian Jones, I'm a patient at the large surgery as well, so it is a personal. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's it for declarations of interest. Okay,
yeah.
Moving on to agenda item number 3, urgent matters as agreed by the chair. Don't have any today. So we will move on to the minutes. You will notice that there's three applications in today and then there are a couple of other items at the end. So that might be quite lengthy. So don't think that once we've gone through the 3 that it will be the end of the meeting. It might go on a little bit after that. So if we go through the minutes, which is agenda item number 4, it's pages 7 to 22. So if we look, and again, if as I'm going through them, if you just unmute if you have any issues with the minutes as we're going through them, I'll go through the pages reasonably slowly. And like I said, just unmute.
Wedi colli, dwi'm yn clywed neb. Dwi'n gorfod lipridio fo yma.
Chair, I think the booth audio has been muted, so we can't hear anything from the floor in the chamber. I don't know if anyone in Democratic Services can help with that.
I can hear you.
I can hear the chair, yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear the chair.
I couldn't.
Yeah, I can hear you, Chair.
I can't hear.
I can hear you.
No, I can't.
Mary ddim yn clywed chwaith.
Mary. No. Fedra I ddim clywed yn byd.
Chair, if you try and speak now, it says that you're unmuted on the system on Zoom now, but I can't still can't hear you. If you
Okay.
Oh, I can hear you now, Chair.
Okay.
Apologies for the apologies for that.
Gwyneth, Emrys, ti'n gallu clywed?
Dwi'n clywed chi rwan, yndw. Mae gynna i eisiau dod ar rhywbeth i fyny ar cywirdeb ydw i pan dwi'n dod at hynny.
Yeah, we're on page 9.
I'm on page 7 still when I saw your lips move.
Okay, so yeah, page 7 on the minutes.
Yeah, mae'n deud yn Gymraeg, datganodd y cynghorydd Emrys Wyn gysylltiad personol sy'n rhagfarnu ag eitem 6, oherwydd ei fod yn adnabod yr ymgeisydd cywir. Dywedodd ei fod yn byw yn agos at y cais hefyd. Gai bydd hwnna mwy eglur? Dwi'n byw gefn ar ymgeisydd. Mi roeddwn ni'n un o'r rhai ymgynghorwyd â nhw fel un o'r trigolion. Dydyn ni mor agos â hynny.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr.
Okay, so moving on then, page 8, page 9, page 10. We're still on the agenda item number 5, and then page 11, we went on to application the 6, and that was on page 12 and 13 and 14. And then we went on to application number 7, which was on page 14 and 15 and 16, and application 8, page 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Page 20 was application number 9 and number 10. And page 21 was additional information on number 11. And then that was carried on to page 22 as well. So would anybody like to propose that they're a true and accurate record of the meeting?
I propose, Chair. Our second, Chair, Peter.
Thank you. So proposed by Councillor Christine Marston and seconded by Councillor Peter Scott. And as we will do with minutes, unless there are any objections, if you want to unmute, if there are any objections to that, and then we can discuss. Otherwise, we'll take them as a true record. Cynghorydd Gwyneth, do you want to say something?
Yeah, mae jyst isio cywiro ar y tudalen ola, typo di hwn, were yn lle where.
Oh, yeah, I see you. Confirmed the owners of the land were aware the tree was situated. Yeah, were happy. So the first were. Yeah, Jack Loud. Okay. All right, so we are moving on to now the items for committee today. As you will see on the blue sheets or the late representations that you should have all been sent by Judith Williams last night, the order has been changed a little bit, as is quite often the case. We'll be going into item number 7 first, because that has a public speaker. So, and obviously there is quite a lot of information on the late sheets, especially with regards to agenda item number 8, the AWEL wind farm, so which is going to come after the first 3 agenda items. So agenda item number 7, so if we turn to that, that's on page 97 of our reports. And the ward is Bottlewithen. The ward member is Councillor Richard Maynon. The application number is 40/2021/0309/PF. The proposal is the erection of a 198-bed registered care home, use class C2, landscaping, parking facilities and associated works. It's a resubmission. The location is plot C7, St Asaph Business Park, St Asaph, LL17 OJB. And as you will see, we do have a public speaker on this. The officer, on the blue sheets, I think the officer recommendation is incorrect. It says officer recommendation is to grant. So that's not right, is it? So just to see on the late rep sheet, that the officer recommendation is to refuse. So there's an error just there on the late rep sheet. Which obviously is in the report anyway, the main substantial report. So we have a public speaker which is a Mr. Dylan Southern, who's the applicant. So this is just information for the speaker. You will have 3 minutes to address the committee. When it does get to 3 minutes, you will have to stop. So you do need to be strict on that. Okay, and whenever you're ready, you can start. And whenever you start talking, I will start the time. Okay. So I think you're on mute at the moment, Mr. Southern.
Is that okay?
Yes, yep, can hear you now.
Excellent. So thank you, Chair and members, for letting me talk this morning. We must ask ourselves as people of conscience, did we ever mean to allow planning policy to maintain an unfit for purpose care home structure in the county, which allows dependent older people to share bathroom and showering facilities with numerous strangers at the most vulnerable time of their lives? That 50% of care home residents will live in a room less than 12 square meters with domestic width corridors and floors which do not have accessible lifts. And yet, as a county, nearly £58 million of public funds is spent each year supporting this infrastructure. Will my description of our care infrastructure be acceptable to both you and your loved one's potential future? In addressing amenity, concern has been expressed that some older people will become isolated due to the position of the building. Most people wishing to use the facility will be at a stage in their lives where self-care will increasingly deteriorate and the need or demand for shops and community facilities reduces to the point where the world must come to them. The high-speed fibre band available to the site was a significant element in choosing it, and also its immediate proximity to LLANFAIR. These are key factors in site choice and to reduce demand on health and social services, with the project made possible by our future landlord, the Welsh Government. The noise assessment submitted in support of the planning application shows that noise levels within the building will meet the required targets with suitable building systems to control heat and air levels, and they are subjected continuously to rigorous inspection by the Care Standards Inspectorate for Wales. In conclusion, it cannot be that not fit for purpose environments are maintained for another LDP cycle because the understanding of amenity in current policy is the opposite of what is required for a C2 application. It cannot be that an engineering solution cannot be agreed to address window installations and building temperatures. We will furthermore, we'll struggle to maintain our heritage, culture and Welsh language if we do not stop the positive outflow of young people from the county by offering opportunity. The committee faces a difficult task given the conclusions of the planning officer, who is relying on policy which I'm sure was never designed to be detrimental towards any citizen within the county. But councillors should be reassured that the site cannot be used for any other purpose under the leasing terms of the Welsh Government. All that remains for me is to request that the committee give a voice to the vulnerable, give them the choice to live in a dignified and safe place, and give them the hope to return home, and if not, end their life in comfort and full dignity. Please make this the beginning of change for planning policy and ensure the needs of our citizens and ourselves are met in full.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just going to bring in the officers first, just on this to give us a bit of an overview of the history of it and some of the things that will be up for discussion. Then we can go into the debate on this. So bring in Paul Mead.
Diolch, Chair. Bore da. Good morning, members. Just a bit of background, I think, for members in terms of the consideration of this application before you. As you'd read on the papers there, this is a resubmission, and therefore it's a material consideration that obviously we've assessed a plan and application on this site for the same use before. So I just wanted to make that clear that this is a resubmission of a previously refused application. The site where the proposed care facility is to be located is within the St Asaph Business Park LDP designation. The St Asaph Business Park LDP designation sets out that this is allocated for mainly B1 uses, employment uses, and obviously that went through a sort of statutory process of allocation within your local development plan. So the starting point there is that this is an allocated employment site, and it does contain various business and industrial uses. So that's the starting point. The other LDP policies that you've got mean that, notwithstanding it being allocated for employment uses, people can apply for planning permission for other uses on this site, but they have to go through certain tests within your local development plan policies. Some of those tests relate to asking the question, really, is this the most suitable site in principle? Is this the most suitable site for the proposed use? And what an applicant would have to do in that regard is have a look at whether there are more appropriate available sites elsewhere, and also whether in developing this site it might sort of prejudice the site and its allocation for the originally intended purpose. Now, what's happened with this second application, members, is that obviously the applicant has gone away and done a bit more work on the proposal to try and deal with some of these policy issues. So from the perspective of whether there are any other available suitable sites, the conclusion there is that there aren't, and that this is the most suitable site for this development. The fact that it's within an allocated employment site, the site has been marketed for traditional employment uses for a long period of time, and therefore the applicant's argument here is that the site hasn't come forward for your traditional employment uses, and therefore why can't we put this alternative use on this particular site? So again, you need to give some consideration to that, those two issues of there isn't any suitable sites elsewhere, and actually this site hasn't been developed for employment purposes for many years as part of the allocation. So they're two issues that you need to consider. The third one, and I think this is the most important one really for members, is where you're talking about a compatible use in a particular location. The concerns that you will have read within your report there relate to the fact that A, this is pretty close to the A55 trunk road, and B, it's also close to an existing Class B2 general industrial use, the TRB factory nearby. So the issues for officers in relation to this are that the noise report that was submitted with the application, basically, as the speaker has alluded to there, suggests that any noise that comes from surrounding land uses, including the A55, can be mitigated and controlled. But to do that would mean that any sort of windows on the building would need to remain unopenable. So closed windows for a C2 residential care use. And from an officer perspective, we consider that is actually showing that really a residential care home in this location isn't a compatible use in relation to its surrounding land uses. So I think it was just important to just to emphasise what the issues are here for you in terms of debating the plan and application that's before you. It's an allocated employment site, but that doesn't necessarily rule out a proposal of this nature on it, because there are tests within your LDP. The applicants have gone through those tests and satisfied the tests in relation to no alternative sites, and argued obviously that the site hasn't come forward for employment uses before. But I think the remaining issue for officers is the fact that you've got to ask yourself the question, would a residential care home dealing with elderly and vulnerable patients, would this be the right location for it? And officers continue to argue that it wouldn't, and clearly we need to emphasise that this is a recommendation to refuse, contrary to what was in error put on the blue sheet. Apologies for that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. As you will have seen, there was a couple of emails that were sent yesterday to all committee members from the applicant. So just to make you aware of those, there's a lot of information on the late representation sheet as well. There's some representations made by TRB Limited, and then there's obviously some officers response to that. So just to make you aware of those, that there is quite a lot of information on that. I'm sure there's going to be quite a lot of questions on this, so that's fine. We will go through them. I'm just going to ask, I know the local member is Councillor Richard Maynon, and I can see a couple of people have got their hands up. If anyone's speaking on his behalf, do they want to unmute now? Nobody's mentioned that, but if they are, then just let me know now, and they could go first. Otherwise, I'll just take it in the order that people put their hands up. Okay. All right, so we'll go with Councillor Ann Davis first then.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Cadeirydd. First of all, I'd like to mention the suitability of this site for a nursing home. I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but this site has been used by St Kentigern Hospice for patients for daycare services. This has been very successful indeed, and the location was, with the accessibility, was good. 12 years ago, I stood outside the Royal Alexandra Hospital in Rhyl protesting about the closure. CLWYD. This was detrimental to the residents in the area who would be transferred there to recover after major operations or for respite care, freeing up beds at Ysbyty GLANFAIR. The closure of the Royal Alexandra, amongst others, has contributed greatly to the bed blocking of acute beds at Ysbyty GLANFAIR. And we all know the result of that. Operations being cancelled, serious operations being cancelled. Care in the community has been reasonably successful for those with moderate needs to be looked after in their own homes. But we now see a shortage of carers, and the pressure that's been put on unpaid carers is shocking. We have been promised the new hospital in Rhyl. 12 years ago this was promised. We attended many meetings. We saw 6 different plans. The money was in hand to build this hospital. 12 years later, there is nothing. My opinion, this application is a breath of fresh air. It will be run by professionals, and it will free up acute beds at Ysbyty GLANFAIR and give our residents a choice for their healthcare in the future. I'd like to propose we grant this application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we will need, I obviously appreciate everything you've just said there, but the reason for refusal is around those. So if you can just because you've proposed it, if you just think about how that you can just say that the applicant's going to overcome those reasons for refusal, then that I'm sure that's what the legal officer would be telling you in a few minutes time. So if you don't have to come up with them right now, but I'll come back to you in a little bit just about that. Does anyone want to second that proposal?
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And again, if we just think about, obviously, usually if we go the other way and it's a reason to grant, officers say we should grant it, you want to refuse it, you have to give the reasons. Well, similarly with this one, because officers have said refusal on those grounds on page
140.
140, yeah. If we just come up with, if we want to go against the officers to grant it, that's not an issue. It's just we have to say why that we don't think those about the amenity and the noise, and you obviously don't agree with the officers on that. If we just fill that out a little bit, I'll bring you in now anyway, Councillor Brian Jones, who seconded it because you
yeah. Thanks. Yeah, we'll come to the reasons for the refusal, but that's all pretty straightforward in my view, because the reasons why the officers are saying to refuse it are pretty weak. They don't hold a lot of water in my book, but anyway, we'll come to that. Just like to remind members, it's 78 days to Christmas. You might not think that's relevant to a planning meeting, but when you look at the report pack that says refuse and the late rep sheet says grant, it appears that we're in party mood already. But some of the points that the officer made about this facility, location, how a comment can be made about the location when the officers recommended that we approved a sort of a similar facility in Brighton Road in Rhyl, and wait for it, 78 days to Christmas, next to a railway line. So that's pretty weak, that, saying that this is in the wrong place. The point about the LDP, we've had examples at planning very recently where the LDP applications have been swerved to get round that. One in Mellindon, a housing application, and the LDP, it wasn't adhered to there, the application went through. So any talk about the LDP and what the use of the site is at the minute, industrial, doesn't hold water for that, for me. Mr. Southern raised a very relevant point. If you've ever took the time to go around care homes run by Ddinbych, unfortunately, we can hide away from it. They're not fit for purpose. COVID has exposed it even more. I'm not saying it's anybody's fault, but they aren't fit for purpose. And when you compare those facilities against what's in the pack for this one, an absolute state-of-the-art facility, we've got a local person that's involved in it. You might argue that some of the patients might come from outside the area, etc., etc., etc. But you cannot disregard the fact that this, if it's granted, and surely it's going to be granted, I cannot see how members of this planning committee are not going to grant or go for this, as long as you make sure which sheet you're reading and you're not voting for refuse and voting for grant off different sheets. It's a state-of-the-art facility. These people obviously know what they're doing. On the basis of that, you committee should all be voting for this, and the officers' arguments against it are pretty weak in my book. End of story. Thank you.
Okay, so just looking at the reason for refusal, obviously officers saying it would not be possible to provide a satisfactory standard of amenity. So you're obviously just saying the opposite. You're saying it would provide a satisfactory standard of amenity, and that you don't feel that it's an incompatible use of the location.
Well, no, I've read the pack. You know, if you can't trust in a professional outfit, the pack clearly says what they're going to provide, how they're going to provide it, and that's good enough grounds. And again, very, very briefly, you know, we passed an application last month for a Sandy Lodge care home, a building not fit for use, with a lot of massive question marks over it, and we passed that one via the officers pushing it. And this particular one, which is clearly state of the art, and it's there in the pack, and officers saying we should be refusing it. It's comical to people looking in. And actually, somebody rang me up, and Mr. Jones, and he was prepared to come onto this meeting. He asked me that very same question. How did an application go through last month, i.e. Sandy Lodge, on officer recommendation, and this one, which they're absolutely chalk and cheese in favour of this particular application, and officers are saying we should refuse it. It makes us all look, what's the word? Pretty silly.
Okay, message received. Let's we'll move on without further ado, because you've managed to get Sandy Lodge into the next application, into the next month's agenda. Okay.
Pardon, Mr. Chairman, would it be all right for me to just come back very briefly there for legal advice? Officers saying it's the wrong site for this nursing home. Now, hasn't a precedent already been set because it's been used by St Kentigern Hospice for similar needs? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think the officers actually are okay with the site, because if you look at the reasons for refusal from March 2020 and the reasons for refusal now, they are obviously different. So they have sort of suggested that what they're still saying is it's incompatible, but they're not saying it can't be used for that. I think that's what Paul was emphasising in his initial speech. But I'll bring him back in now, just anyway.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's important that members understand really what they're looking at today in terms of a planning application. I think you're hearing some arguments around the level of care within Denbighshire and the issue that this is a state-of-art facility. You should put that out of your mind really in relation to what existing level of care exists within Denbighshire. You've got to deal with the planning issues, and the planning issues relate to land use. You'll be reminded by me that the Sandy Lodge application at the last committee, there was no change of use application there. You were dealing with applications for extensions to a building. So please try and forget about what happened at the last committee. I know certain members might not want to, but we do need to focus on what's before us here. And the issue here is that the application site is a vacant site within the St Asaph Business Park. So I'm not 100% sure what Councillor Ann Davies is saying about this site has been used before. This application site is a vacant site within the business park. So we need to be clear on what is at the site here. It's an open area of land where they're proposing to put a building on for a 198-bed care facility. It's close to the A55 and it's close to a Class B2 general industrial use. So members just have to decide in their own minds whether they feel as though that is a suitable location for a 198-bed care home. That's the main issue. The issue of the quality of it, the issue of the quality of any other facility within the county is not an issue. You've got to deal with the land use in relation to this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, I've got Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Thank you, Chair. You must tell me to put the camera off if indeed we're experiencing any difficulty in hearing, and I will immediately turn my camera off, Chair. Okay. First of all, could I just pick up on what Councillor Brian Jones has just said about the care homes run by Denbighshire are not up to standard, as it has been said in the past. I've got to point out that the main plank of the providers of care within Denbighshire are privately owned, and I think Denbighshire County Council's very few homes that they run are run excellently and have and do get wonderful reports from the Inspectorate for Wales. So after saying that, Chair, I think that we looking at the demographics in our county, they are changing, and an ageing population that we're keeping in their own homes as our policy, as long as we possibly can, to give the elderly a choice of how they want to live and how they want to keep living in their own homes. But we have to look at the needs when this might be after they've been hospitalised, because they are at the end of life, really, because we do try to keep elderly people in their own homes because that's their wish. But once we get to the stage where they're being hospitalised and on discharge, we need a structured care that are really to perhaps rehabilitate, if we possibly can, the elderly person to be able to return to their own homes. This work will be done at this unit, and I think that this is an excellent part of their business plan. This has to be a better way forward than discharging from our hospitals and going back to an empty home and trying to adjust without a care plan, and that happens quite regularly. This unit would stop what we called, or what we used to call, bed blocking. The patients cannot go home because there's just no one to take care of them. And in some cases, they have complex needs. I might have some reservations, I might say, about the size, but I think the quality, the benefits would outstrip that, but the business plan does seem sound, or they wouldn't be investors willing to go along with this. And the providers have a confidence that this will work. And I think that we have to give them every chance that we can to put this excellent facility in what I would, it has been empty, the site, for years now, with no takers to develop that site. And we keep going on about opening windows. I did think about that very, very carefully, and air pollution, noise pollution. And I did think about that, but looking at the, I then asked myself, how often have I opened my windows in my bungalow over, and I live near a busy road, have I opened my windows over the last 12 months? And I can say probably 3 or 4 times. I rely on the heating and the conditions within my own bungalow. And I think we're all experiencing at this moment in time financially, a lot of homes are closing because of the cost of care, and they're putting that down to the size not being big enough, perhaps. It's down to their own business plans. And I think this will be a much better way forward. And I do think that the plan in the area that it's planned to go, I think we are to accept that things are changing, and I think we've got to go along with the change. Thank you, Chair. I would be supporting this application, most certainly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Mark Young.
Thank you, Chair. It's just some clarity off officers, please. So when we're saying that the land use is for employment, but they feel it may be okay to go to this, and they talk about a report which has been provided saying that high quality care is a shortfall. We've also got documents saying that there's capacity in North Wales for bed places of 623 and in Denbighshire 247. So I'm just wondering how much weight we should be given that. And on the window point, are officers saying that the windows wouldn't be, if it went forward, are they saying that the windows would not be able to be designed so you could open them? Because that is a big point. And if they're saying they can't, I need to get my head around that. So what are they saying about the windows, and how much weight should we give to the capacity of spare beds in North Wales and Denbighshire? Just those points, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just bring in Councillor Bob Murray. I know Councillor Ann Davis and Brian Jones got their hands up as well, but I'll just bring in Bob Murray first, as he hasn't spoken yet, and then I'll bring in the officers.
Thank you, Chair. I've got totally to agree with what Joan has just said, and the members. I think it's going to be a great asset, and I would ask members to go against officers and agree to let this go through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, do officers just want to come in on the points Mark Young made?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. The issue around capacity, need, spare beds, and all that type of thing, I think, again, you have to sort of disregard that in relation to the land use considerations with this planning application. As I'd set out at the very start, really, your planning policies here within the LDP have allocated this site for employment use, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people have to just apply for planning permission for employment uses. We've got to give other uses consideration, and we've got to go through these tests. One of the tests is whether there are no alternative sites suitable, and they've gone through a lot of work to show that. And the other one is really, has the site been marketed and has there been take up for employment uses? Again, it's shown that is not the case. So the question here really fundamentally boils down to the reason for refusal as we've set out on the blue sheet, which is around, is it the compatible use in the location close to the A55 and the general industrial use of the TRB? I think what I'm hearing from members here, and I'm getting the general feeling from a lot of you, that you're quite supportive of this business, of this proposed modern facility to provide care. That's fine. I understand the arguments that you've got for that. But I think going back to the issues that Councillor Mark Young's raised there, I think we've got to focus on this issue of the windows and the issue of whether we feel as though, and it would have to be a design feature really in the building, that the windows there are there really just to let light in and nothing else. The windows would not be openable within the building, and therefore that is a design feature that would have to be part of the scheme. again, you know, the situation there of having windows that are capable of being opened, the issue there with a planning condition would be, well, how do we police that? How do we make sure that the windows stay closed? So that the reality would be that the windows would have to be designed as closed windows in relation to the design of the building. So I hope that answers Councillor Mark Young's questions. I'm happy to come back if he's got any further clarity needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, didn't George Formby write a policy on windows? Or was that cleaning windows? I'm not sure. Or was it opening windows? George Formby. I thought he wrote a policy. But anyway, on the opening and closing windows, there's piles of methods out there for opening windows. I just don't see how this is relevant to this application. The securing of windows in facilities is it's age-old solution sorted out. What I wanted to say was to Councillor Butterfield, and for clarity, I certainly wasn't criticising the running of Ddinbych care homes. The point I was making was that the people that are running them, the staff, everyone's
breaking up a bit.
Breaking up.
Turn your video off. There you go.
Yeah, okay, hopefully that's better now. Yeah, to Councillor John Butterfield and others, I wasn't criticising the people that are running the care homes, the Ddinbych County Council officers. And for clarity, what I was making the point on was that the buildings are no longer fit for purpose. They're old buildings, you can't do anything with them. And a typical example is you can't put wet rooms in some of those facilities and them rooms because they were fit for purpose back in time. Unfortunately, they're not quite fit for purpose today. So hopefully that clarifies my position, reference Ddinbych and probably some of the private care homes. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Thank you very much. Okay, Cynghora then, Miss Wynn.
Ydych chi'n rhoi i'n meddwl? Chi'n rhoi di? Okay. Ia, dim ond cwestiwn gennai. Dwi'n yn siŵr os ydych chi'n rhoi di?
Yes, we can hear you.
Ydych chi'n rhoi, mae pawb arall yn fel mae'n sŵn yn torri, ta waith. Cwestiwn dwi hefyd yn edrych ar yr adroddiad yr awdurdod iechyd, a maen nhw'n sôn am gael yma cynghorydd Mark Young eisoes wedi cyfeirio ato fo. Mae gennai chydig o bryder ynghylch posibilrwydd o'r effaith y gall datblygiad yma gael ar gartrefi eraill o fewn y sir. Dwi wedi bod yn sôn am y sir rwan, ddim yn sôn am y siroedd cyfagos, a mae'n siŵr bod rhaid i ddigon agos i gael ei effeithio hefyd. Ond mae yna gartrefi yn y dre lle dwi'n ddiwyni, gartrefi henoed, mae yna rhai i'r de o lle dwi ac mae yna rhai dre nesaf Ddinbych. So ni'n bryderus a dwi'n cydnabod bod hwn yn mynd i fod yn, os geithau ganiatau yn ddatblygiad state of the art, fel mae wedi cael ei ddisgrifio. A dwi'n cydnabod hynny, ond mae'r her wedyn fydd i'r cartrefi gofal sydd yn y cymunedau ni eisoes yn mynd i fod yn fwy, achos mae llawer iawn o rhain ar hyn o bryd yn gorfod gweithio'n hynod o galed i gadw'r bobl yn eu cymunedau, ac wrth gwrs efallai fydd yr atyniad yma yn tynnu bobl o'i cymunedau gan achosi i fwy i bobl o gael o teithio ymhellach i weld i'w hanwyliad hefyd mewn cartrefi. Pwynt i'w ystyried ydy o, dwi'n meddwl bod o'n fater o ran cynllunio, ond mae o'n bryder gen i yn bersonol. A dwi'n gwybod bod yna rai bobl wedi siarad am hyn efo fi hefyd. Diolch yn fawr.
No, diolch yn fawr. Yeah, it obviously is a concern, but as I was just going to come in and say, but you said it yourself anyway, that it's not necessarily a material planning consideration, so that's fine if we're just aware of that. Councillor Melvin Mile.
I'll just put my video off just in case it goes all ting-tong. It's not really a material planning consideration, but this is an employment park, and I guess they're going to be employing around about 60 people. Well, if a factory was going to be going on there employing 60 people, we'd support it. This is just another, it's employment by any other name. That's all my point, really. Thank you very much.
Yeah, No, it's another useful point to throw into the mix that obviously a care home will employ people, yeah, definitely. But it's just the change of use, I think, where officers were coming at it. But yeah, no, valid point, thank you.
Chair, can I just come back on the response to the window question?
Yes, Councillor Mark.
So obviously, if the windows can't be opened, they just need to understand the ventilation, because we have got COVID and we have been opening windows under guidance to ventilate rooms, etc. So how will they manage that to make sure we have the ventilation required in this building? Because not being able to open the windows is a concern of mine, and especially with COVID. So can officers just clarify that point, please?
Okay, yeah, I'll let Maida Chloe Davis come in first, and then officers can come in just in a moment or so about that. I think there is some information as well on the emails sent by Mr. Foxall last night on ventilation, but I might be getting my emails confused because there was a few flying around last night. But there is definitely some information on the ventilation, I know, from the applicants. Cynghorydd Maida Chloe Davis.
Wel, diolch, da chi'n hynod o garedig, Mr Cadeirydd, a finna ddim ond yn gynghori gerllaw y lle yma, ond fel da chi'n gwybod, nes I ofyn i'r cais gael ei roi o flaen y Pwyllgor I chi gael ei drafod o, a dyna'r rheswm, a da chi yn ei drafod o yn bwyllog, a dwi'n meddwl yn resymol. Mae Paul Mead, y swyddog, wedi rhoi 2 ddatganiad I chi wan, a dwi jyst eisiau fo wneud o'n glir be oedd o'n feddwl. Dwi'n siŵr iddo o ddeud pan ddaru un o'ch chi ddeud bod ne dipyn o angen gwelâu I bobl yr oedran yma yn y sir. Disregard the lack of beds. Dwi'n yn gwybod dwi wedi gael yn iawn, ond rhywbeth tebyg I hynny. Wel, o'n I fu i'r amlosgfa ddefnyddio'r ddadl honno o brinder safle amlosgfa I gael caniatâd i'r un sydd yno rŵan ddim yn bell o'r safle yma. A'r ail beth, fuon ni'n aros mewn gwesty yn ddiweddar, yn reit modern deud y gwir, do'n em un o'i ffenestri lloffdyn nhw yn agor. Roedd yn dibynol ar yr awyrlu peirianyddol oedd yn nghlwm yn y lle, a mi oedd Covid o gwmpas yn doedd. Rhyw chydig o wythnosau nôl, hyd yn oed. Felly, dwi'n yn dall y ddadl yno. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Eric. Do officers want to come in on those couple of points from Mark Young and Councillor Maida Chloe Davis?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I may have to turn to our case officer, Denise Shaw, just on the issue of the ventilation and the arrangements that might have been presented within the application. I'll come to Denise in a moment. I'm just going to answer the questions that Councillor Maida Lloyd Davis had made. I think that the 2 separate issues, Councillor Lloyd Davis, in relation to the crematorium application and this particular application, in relation to the crematorium proposal, which was clearly outside of any development boundary at that time, one of the issues in relation to that assessment was the availability and capacity of other crematoria within a particular area. So they had to do a sort of a process by which they would look at how many people could go to one crematorium in an area over another. So in that regard, need was a bit more of an issue in relation to that. I think what we're talking about here fundamentally, though, is market forces in relation to this particular proposal. And I think what you can't do as a planning committee is give too much weight to any issues around the quality of care facilities within the county currently, or even the need for care facilities within the county currently. Clearly, market forces will dictate here whether this is viable or not. What you do have to give regard to, as I keep emphasising, is the issue around, is this a compatible location for this type of use, a care facility for elderly people where fundamentally they're in close proximity to the A55 and in close proximity to a general industrial use, and they would have to keep the windows within the building permanently closed. That's the issue for you. The noise assessment that was submitted by the applicants in relation to this proposal acknowledged that if the windows are open on this building, then the level of noise from surrounding land uses would be unacceptable, and it wouldn't meet the World Health Organization levels in relation to noise. So that's the issue, and that's why the applicants are saying, okay, we understand that the outside noise is unacceptable, therefore we'll keep the windows closed. That probably brings me on to the issue of internal ventilation, which I'm gonna hand over to Denise to try and touch on that, if that's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, bring in Denise Shaw now. Just
okay, morning, everybody. Yeah, so the issue with windows, sorry, I can hear myself twice. Okay, sorry, just bear with me. Yeah, so the issue with the windows, I'm still doing it.
if you put your light on that one and then mute.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so the issue with the windows is, yeah, if they have to put in non-openable windows in order to make the internal noise acceptable, then that raises the issue of ventilation and air conditioning. We have to be able to heat, cool and ventilate that building. So they would then have to install some kind of mechanical ventilation system and an air conditioning system in order to ensure internal temperatures are maintained and that airflow is circulated through the building. So we would have to condition that is installed. We would also have to condition that windows are fixed units with no openable elements in order to ensure noise is acceptable. How we then monitor whether that system is kept working over the lifetime of the building, I suppose is a question mark. But yeah, we could condition that details of the air conditioning unit, mechanical ventilation is submitted to us prior to commencement of the development to make sure it meets our satisfaction.
Okay, thank you. That's nice and clear. Councillor Christine Marston.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a point from a very personal perspective. I've worked on in LLANFAIR Hospital for the last 3 months on the medical floor, and they don't have air conditioning, but they do have the ability to open windows. The windows don't open that much. It's only by about 3 or 4 inches. They don't let a lot of ventilation in. My personal experience, I have been over in the Walton Centre and spent a lot of time there. They have a closed system with an air conditioning, and the working conditions and the conditions for patients are a lot more advantageous in the Walton Centre as it is in LLANFAIR, because LLANFAIR doesn't have air conditioning. I just wanted to make that personal point that I don't see the windows not opening is an issue. I think you can control the ambient temperature inside the building very successfully. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's clear. I think as and when we go to the vote, we've got those conditions which I'll just add on and then go into the legal officer. Okay, there are some more hands up. I know it's people that have spoken. So if we have had a pretty good debate about this. If we can keep it nice and brief now, just to clear up any points, and then we can go into just figuring out exactly how the vote's going to work. Okay, so I've got Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Thank you, Chair. Very, very quickly, just to say that most large hotels throughout the whole of the worldwide don't have opening windows. Certainly large city where there is high pollution in large city hotels throughout the world do not have opening windows. So this is an issue that quite clearly could be got over. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr, thank you. Cynghorydd Emryswyn, ti eisiau dod I mewn?
Ie, dim ond y sydyn iawn I gyfeirio yn ôl at yr hyn ddwedwyd gan y swyddog ynghylch awyrru'r ystafelloedd ag ati. Mae'r ffaith bod y ffenestri ddim yn agor gen I hefyd yn bryder, oedd hynny'n bryder wrth mi ddarllen y cynlluniau. Achos mae rhywun yn sylweddoli mae air wedi ailgylchu'n aml iawn ydy air sy'n dod drwy system awyrru yr air conditioning. Ond os ydy hwn yn mynd I gael I basio, gawn ni fel sydd wedi cael ei awgrymu gan y swyddog sicrhau bod yna amod yn cael ei roi yn y caniatâd bod rhaid cael system awyrru diogel yn ei le. Da ni'n gwybod bydd I gwerth gallu agor y ffenestri dros y 19 mis rwan. Da ni'n cael yr hannog I wneud hynny hyd yn oed wrth yr awr y fôn efo bobl yn y ceir. Felly, os gwelwch yna, gawn ni cael yr amod yna mewn os bydd hwn yn cael i'w basio heddiw. Diolch.
Okay, yeah, I think that's clear. Okay, so I'll just try and tidy this up in terms of what we're going to go to the vote for, and then I'll bring in Paul Mead, and then I'll bring in the legal officer to check that we've got it all right. But as I see it, okay, we've had a proposer from Councillor Anne Davis, seconded by Councillor Brian Jones, and they have given the reasons as to why they don't think it should be refused and why it should be granted, about the incompatibility, that they see it as compatible. They don't have an issue with the windows, etc. It would be requiring to have conditions on it with mechanical ventilation and to make sure that the condition is non-opening windows. So those could be put on there. So that's how I see it at the moment, that we would go to the vote on that. I'll just bring in Paul Mead, and then if the legal officer, if Tim, if you want to come in on any of that, then let me know.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, all I was going to say was, as ever, if members resolve to grant, contrary to the officer recommendation on this, then that we would need to impose a set of planning conditions. And normally what happens is we would try and get those agreed with local members, or even bring them back to planning committee if members have any specific concerns about how they are worded. I think it's also important to just point out as well that building regulations will also dictate in some way how the internal arrangement of this building will be operated in relation to sort of escape routes and the opening of doors and windows, etc., to facilitate escape. I think we need to also have regard to the fact that you know, the building can't, any building can't just completely remain sealed all the time. There will need to be compliance with building regulations for escape routes, etc. So I think I just wanted to re-emphasise that point really on compatibility with the neighbouring land uses again, Chair. But I'll bring in Tim to see if we've got enough on the proposal for to grant by Councillor Anne Davis. Thank you.
Okay, so actually on the conditions, we don't need to worry about any conditions yet, because I personally think just because the local member's not here today, I think and the committee have got quite are quite involved in this. I think it'd be best if this came back to committee with the conditions if it were to be granted. I think members of the committee would like to look at the conditions themselves, unless anyone wants to leave it to the local member. But that's just my sort of take on it. So the legal officer, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify in relation to what's been agreed here, what the proposal is, can we just have some clarification in respect of the suggested conditions and where they play with the proposal, please? The proposer. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah. So, well, the two suggested, there'll presumably be lots more conditions because there's not any conditions at the moment. Yeah.
So, sorry, Chair. I think there's two separate issues here. I think what Tim was asking for there is that there's been a proposition to go against officer recommendation, and I think we just need to be clear as to why the member feels as though they want to go against the officer recommendation. So to give the clear reasons for going against the officer recommendation, in giving those clear reasons, the member might be suggesting that she feels the acceptability of the development can be controlled through the imposition of conditions. If that's the case, we need to just be clear on what the local member feels those conditions might be. But eventually, if it is granted, we will bring a set of conditions back to planning committee for the clarity on the precise wording of them. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So the proposer was Councillor Anne Davis and seconded by Councillor Brian Jones. So if either of you want to just come in now and just to clarify those points, and then we will go to the vote. Okay, it's just to make it all joined up. Okay, so Councillor Anne Davis, do you want to come in, or Brian Jones?
Yeah, I'll jump in unless Anne wants to go. Anne? No?
Happy for you to go. Go ahead, Brian.
Right, okay. So I think when I kicked off, I said that, and then the officer might want to come back and add anything on it, but the officer's saying that it's in close proximity to a major trunk road and an existing B2 use class unit. I've seconded the proposal on the grounds that I disagree with that, and that's two reasons why that they're not relevant, they're not applicable.
Okay.
Yeah, the noise.
No, I think that's absolutely fine. It's just
I've just flipped it on his head, hasn't it? I've made the job easy.
Yeah, I'm just gonna just before we go to the vote, we're just having a Paul. I think Paul just wants to come in for a second.
Sorry, yeah, I just wondering. I know Nicola Stubbins is on the meeting as well, so it's just clarifying before we go to the vote if Nicola did have anything that she wanted to say as part of this. Thank you, Chair.
Diolch, bore da, pawb. Yes, I've listened to all of the points raised, and I would start by saying, you know, I welcome everybody's interest in provision of services for older people, very important for us as a council. However, in terms of the material planning considerations of this application, I completely support the officer's recommendation to refuse this application. And the basis of that is because I do not believe the proposal provides an acceptable level of amenity for residents. The level of need of the residents that this provision is focused on are actually those with lower level needs who would have and should have access to local amenity and local provision. And therefore, you would expect them to be out and about in their local community, gentle walking, albeit, but actually accessing local facilities. So therefore, the proximity to the A55 and the trunk road is of real concern to me. In addition, there has been guidance provided by Welsh Government around ventilation for different types of accommodation, and therefore the issue of the windows closing would again be of real concern to me. You will all know, and you will have all seen care homes within your wards during COVID where all of the windows were open, and that was the guidance, that was the Public Health Wales guidance to those provisions. And we know the nature of the client group that this provision is being targeted at are particularly vulnerable to those airborne virus type chest conditions. Therefore, that issue of opening windows is something very, very important. In terms of all the emotive discussions around the social care need, they are not material planning considerations. However, what I can clarify is that there are currently beds available, over 100 beds available for residential care within the county that could take an individual today. So there is not a lack of supply, there is an over provision of supply. And whilst I appreciate this development would be new, shiny and very modern, I don't think members should get lost in the non-material planning consideration around whether or not there is a demand for this, because there is currently an over provision. In addition, in terms of staffing, again, there are shortages within staffing across not only Denbighshire, but across Wales and the wider UK. And therefore there would be concerns, again, not material planning considerations, but just to pick up on some of the emotive discussions, there would be concerns from ourselves as employers of social care staff, but also the private sector and the health board, that this provision would actually take from the existing workforce and therefore make some of our existing provision unviable. But as I said, they are non-material planning considerations, but members have raised those as concerns around the officer's recommendations. Diolch, Chair.
Thank you. As the second, well, I've got two hands up. I will let the people come in, because obviously people might just want to raise something on that, and then we do need to try to go to the vote. I'll bring in Joan. I know, Brian, you had your hand up first, but I'll bring in Joan first, and then Brian, you can come in at the end as you were the seconder for it. So Joan first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, on opening windows and saying that the guidance was that all windows were open. I think that was doors, and I think, Nicola, you went on to say that all residential care homes were encouraged to open windows. When visiting residential care homes, when that was permitted, visitors to residential care homes were having visitations with their relatives through a closed window. They weren't even allowed to go into the premises, and the windows were certainly not open. And looking at the staffing issues, I get very confused on this one, Chair, because after all, staffing issues, we are a planning authority. We're not an employment agency. And if there are issues in and around employment issues, then they should be addressed quite clearly with the providers that are looking for employees. I'm sorry, but I think we shouldn't mix the two. We are a planning authority. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, we've got to remember what hats we're wearing today, and that's
indeed, absolutely.
Again, go on, Bob. You come in before Brian. I'll bring in Brian last. I'm not leaving you out, Brian.
Yeah, I'd just like to say something about. They keep on mentioning air conditioning. Now, today's modern air conditioning does not reuse the polluted air that it takes out. It's the same on planes now. In the old days, airplanes used the air and it went round and round. That's why so many people are ill. Today, the modern air conditioning does not reuse it. So it sends round lovely cool air all the time. So it's a myth that air conditioning are good. And have we ever thought, you know, I know you say about closing windows, it's not the best point, but they haven't been in the manufacturing business with windows. Their vents can be put on as well. But have you ever thought, and it's just a little thought, that maybe some of these people that are going to be in there and in those beds for a long day might want to hear a bit from the outside. Just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Go on then, right, Brian, finish.
Yeah, just to get back on then. So I think that hopefully the first 2 points were picked up what I made about grounds for going against officer recommendation, and thirdly the noise mitigation proposed, that it's considered to be imprecise and impractical. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that the noise mitigation that the officers are claiming, that's not relevant either, and that can be overcome by conditions, etc., etc. And then finally, coming back on what Nicola's just run through, obviously I respect what she said, but very, very briefly, the issues with that have been building since May this year, and the hierarchy, whoever you may think the hierarchy, should have been getting to grips with all of that. They haven't got to grips with it, and then we've got a major problem coming at us because of that, but that's way out of the remit of people like us on this meeting, on the planning committee, and as it's already been pointed out by Councillor Butterfield, it's not relevant. So hopefully you've got the reasons to go against officer recommendation, and I certainly hope the planning committee are going to be voting in favour with Councillor Ann Davis's proposal.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we will go to the vote. So just to be clear, we'll run through it in alphabetical order. It will be, so you'll be voting either for or BLYD if you want to vote to grant the application. This will be against officer recommendation. So that's when you'll be voting for. So for is going to be to grant it. Against will be to go against in accordance with officer recommendation, and then you can abstain. Okay, so if you need any clarity on that, then just obviously make sure you say that before you vote. So we will start off with Councillor, and that's obviously for the conditions to come back to committee as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we'll start off with Councillor Joan Butterfield.
I'm for.
Thank you. Councillor Ellie Chard.
For.
Councillor Ann Davis.
For.
Councillor Peter Evans. He was here. I think he might have gone because it's Pete Prendergast. It's the Pete. Okay. Councillor Alan Hughes. Can we hold it, Alan Hughes? I haven't heard you yet, Alan. I can see you.
Sorry, I was on mute yet. For.
For. Diolch yn fawr.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
That's okay. Councillor Brian Jones.
For.
Councillor Tina Jones.
For.
Cynghorydd Gwyneth Kensler.
Yn erbyn.
Councillor Christine Marston.
For.
Councillor Melvin Mile.
For.
got there just before you have to leave, Melvin. Councillor Bob Murray.
For.
Councillor Paul Panlington. No. Okay, not here. Councillor Pete Prendergast.
For.
Councillor Peter Scott has had to take his wife to hospital. Councillor Tony Thomas is not here. So it's Councillor Julian Thompson-Hill.
For.
Councillor Joe Welch, I'm for. Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn.
Yn erbyn.
And Councillor Mark Young.
For.
Okay, so we'll just tally up those votes. Okay, it's Orblaid is 4 is 13, and Erbyn against is 2. Amatel abstain is 0. Therefore, that application has been granted against officer recommendation, and therefore the conditions will come back to committee at a later committee in the future. Okay, it is 10:51, so if we have a 9-minute break until 11, and then we'll come back and rattle through the other applications and items on the agenda. Okay, thank you very much. So back at 11, which is on page 23 of our reports. The ward is Llanfairdyffryn Clwyd Gwyddelwen. The ward member is Councillor Hugh Evans. The application number is 2021 0637 PS. The proposal is the variation of condition 2 of Planning Permission Code 2018-0448 to vary the list of approved plans to allow amended design and access details. The location is the land at Clover Bank, Llanfairdyffryn Clwyd, RHUTHUN. And on the late sheets, I don't think there is, no, the officer recommendation is to grant. There is no late representations. There's no officers' notes on this. Do officers want to come in particularly on this? I don't think so. So if anyone would like to comment on this, if you want to raise your hand. I haven't got there are no hands raised, so if anyone wants to just unmute and come in on this item. Oh yeah, I'll bring in Councillor Christine Marsden.
All I want to do is propose that we go with officer recommendation to grant. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Ellie Chard, I can see, thank you. And do we have any speakers on this item about any of the anything? No. If not, we will go to the vote on it. Okay, I think the officer recommendation is clear, and obviously you can see the reasons as to why it came to committee in the first place are all set out in the report. So if we're happy, the recommendation is to approve, because it's a variation of a condition rather than to grant. So if we go to the vote on this one, so again, it will be, if you say for or obliged, it will be to approve in accordance with the officer recommendation. If you go against an admin, it will be to go against the officer recommendation, or obviously the opportunity to abstain if you need to. The legal officer, Tim Dillon, want to come in?
Sorry, Chair, just to clarify, yeah, it's the proposal to approve if it is also subject to the conditions set out in the officer's report as well. Thank you. Just to clarify that.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn,
Ie, dim ond, ie. Dim ond er mwyn cael elfen o drafodaeth. Dwi'n anghyfforddus fod hwn yn mynd yn weddol sydyn fel hyn. Mae sylwadau wedi cael ei wneud gan y cyngor lleol, cyngor plwy lleol ynghylch yr cais yma. Ac maen nhw'n dadlau y dylid bod wedi rhoi cais cynllunio o'r newydd ar hwn, gan bod yr newidiadau yn sylweddol. Gai, dim ond sylw, ysgwelwch yn dda, y swyddogion ar y sylw hwnnw sydd wedi dod oddi wrth y cyngor plwy lleol.
Bring in Paul Griffin on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you're quite right. That's what the Community Council have commented on. Just for your sort of information, the planning process allows for amendments to previously approved schemes. One of those ways of doing it is to vary the condition. We're allowed to... Some echo here. I'm unmuted. Sorry about that. Yeah, we can vary the design if we don't feel that the changes are substantial. So there's obviously a sort of an element of subjectivity there. I mean, I would ask if you felt uncomfortable with amending the design because it was 4 meters wider, whether that was substantially different to what was there before. I think in officer's opinion, we'd say, well, there's an existing permission for a single bungalow there. We're still looking at a single bungalow, albeit with an additional room on it. I think officers have come to the conclusion that it's quite reasonable to deal with this through a variation of condition as opposed to requesting a completely fresh, new, full application. I think fundamentally the Section 73 variation condition approach still allows us the opportunity to take into account what different impacts the proposal may have. An officer's sort of conclusion there is the impacts are still acceptable and the changes aren't that substantial either. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, no, nice and clear. Diolch yn fawr.
Ga i ddod yn ôl yn sydyn, diolch i swyddog am yr ymateb yna, ond dwi'n meddwl be oedd yr cyngor cymuned yn tynnu sydd o'r ffaith bod yn newid o fod yn byngalo 2 stafell wely fod yn 2 stafell wely, a hefyd mae'n debyg bod yna peth sydd yn cael ei wneud ar gyfer y ffaith bod yna ffen sy'n cael ei chodi yn ytrach na wal. Unwaith eto, mae'n werth i fi gael clywed barn y swyddogion. Diolch yn fawr am hynny.
Yeah, I think the report actually covers those issues to do with, say, the change in the bedroom numbers. I mean, fundamentally, it's a windfall site. It's a singular plot. Yes, we do have our ambitions for securing more smaller units, but this is still only a 3-bedroom bungalow. I think if we refused this or try to object to it on that basis, we'd be saying, well, we don't need any one-off plots for 3 bedrooms anywhere in the county, or that Llanfair DC doesn't require any 3 bedrooms. I think we'd probably really struggle to maintain that argument. And similarly, they've gone from a wall to a fence. Is it substantial? Well, the site photographs, if you look at the area, there are fences visible within the area that come onto the front. It's a difference. Is it substantial? I think we're on the right process for that. We can still take into account the changes to visual amenity and any changes to residential amenity. And as I say, officer's conclusion was that, on balance, the decision's acceptable, that the proposal's acceptable. Thank you.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr, Paul. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch. Okay, so we will go to the vote. So this is going to be Orblyde 4 to vote in accordance with officer recommendation to approve, and Erbyn against, go against, and abstain, obviously. To abstain. So we're starting off with Councillor Joan Butterfield.
4.
Councillor Ellie Chard.
4.
Councillor Ann Davis.
4.
Councillor Peter Evans. Oh, Councillor Peter Evans.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Alan Hughes.
Sorry, I missed part of that due to being interrupted here, so I'll have to abstain on that one because I didn't hear the...
Thank you. No problems. Councillor Brian Jones.
4.
Councillor Tina Jones.
4.
Hollywood Gwyneth Kensler.
Obliged.
Councillor Christine Marston.
4.
I think Councillor Matt, he was telling me he was leaving. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Bob Murray.
4.
Councillor Paul Pennington. Councillor Pete Prendergast.
4.
Okay. Councillor. Who's just checking nobody else has shown up. Councillor Julian Thompson Hill.
4.
Councillor Joe Welch 4. Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn.
Orblyde.
And Councillor Mark Young.
I'll abstain because I also missed part of the debate. So abstain, please, Chair.
Thank you. And as always, if I haven't called out your name, just shout before we read out the results, because I know people come in and go from the meeting, so it's not always the easiest thing. Okay, so we'll just count up the votes. So we have Orblyde 4 is 13. An Erbyn against is 0, and a MATEL abstain is 2. So therefore, that application has been approved in accordance with officer recommendation. So we are moving on to agenda item number 6, which is on page 59 of our reports. And the ward is DDATBLYGU, Llanffair. The ward member is Councillor Hugh Williams. The application number is 22/2021/0754/PF. The proposal is the erection of one detached dwelling, construction of a new vehicular access and associated works. The location is the land adjacent to GLASFRYN, GELLIFOR, RHUTHUN, LL15 1RY. Again, there's no speakers, there's no information, no additional information on the blue sheets for this one. If we just turn to page, after all the drawings and the pictures, so it's on page 85. Okay, the recommendation is to grant, and the reason it's come to committee is obviously the Llanffair Community Council comments. So again, do we have any speakers on this? I don't think the local member is here. So if anyone wants to speak on this, then unmute now and speak.
Chair, just happy to propose.
Okay, thank you. That was Councillor Julian Thompson-Hill proposing. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Joan Butterfield, I can see, is seconding that one. Thank you. Do we have any speakers on this item? Give you a couple of seconds, and then we'll just go to the vote. So, again, this is a recommendation to grant, subject to a number of conditions, which are on page 95 and 96. So this would be, if we did go for this one, it would be to grant it in accordance with officer recommendation with the attached conditions. So hopefully I've said all the right things, because I can't see the legal officer with his hand up, so that's a good thing. So if we go to the vote on this one again, it'll be Allblide for, to vote in favour in accordance with officer recommendation, and Edwin against, to go against, and Amatel abstain are your options. Okay, so Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Sorry, Chair. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Ellichard.
4.
Councillor Ann Davis.
4.
Peter Evans. We didn't hear you, Pete. Sorry.
4.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Alan Hughes.
4.
Councillor Brian Jones.
4.
Councillor Tina Jones.
4.
And Hodwith Gwyneth Kensler.
Obliged.
Councillor Christine Marston.
4.
Councillor Bob Murray.
4.
Councillor Pete Prendergast.
4.
Councillor Julian Thompson-Hill.
4.
Councillor Joe Welch. 4. Cynghorydd Emrys Wyn. We're on mute, Emrys. Yeah, I can lip read as well. Or Blyde, I think. Councillor Mark Young.
4.
Thank you. Okay, so we have the Cavansum, the total or Blyde is 15, and Edwin against is 0, Amatel abstain is 0, therefore that application has been granted in accordance with officer recommendation. So we are moving on to agenda item number 8, which is, so we've got a couple of items left. Agenda item 10, which is just on the late reps sheet. It's not agenda item, sorry, it's just a bit of information on the real rugby club, which we'll come to, but that's just a sort of 5-second one. Again, the next 2 items may be a bit more lengthy. So agenda item number 8, which is on page 143 of your reports. If I just read out a little bit of information about it, it's the AWEL offshore wind farm. It's a nationally significant infrastructure project. This is what we're discussing today, is the response, the Ddinbych response to the statutory pre-application consultation. And what the consultation only commenced on the 31st of August and finishes on the 11th of October, which is why there obviously wasn't that much information in the initial agenda pack, and that's why the information got to you yesterday. So it was obviously valid reasons as to why it was getting to you quite late, because the time scales are very short. And what this report is actually asking for, what we're asking for today from members, is to seek members' approval to submit a formal consultation response to the pre-application consultation on behalf of the council. So you've obviously got that information that came through on the late sheets yesterday. There's obviously there is information in the agenda report as well. So what we're looking at today is obviously members might come up with some additional suggestions today. And if they're sort of unanimous, then we can vote them all through en bloc, and we'll see how the debate goes, because I know there are a few speakers that want to come in on this. I'll bring in the local members first. I know Councillor Barry Mellor as a local member. Would you like to come in first if you're here? And then I'll
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to speak. It came to light a couple of weeks ago regarding the cables going on shore.
Barry, you're going to be best with your camera off. It's getting a bit crackly.
Will do. Yes, as you know, this offshore wind farm will be off more or less the Great Orme, and I know Conway Council are not very happy with this Arwellimore wind farm. But my concern is where the cable is going to come on to land, which will be just where the new flood defences are on the east ward of Rhyl by the Rhyl Golf Club. On Monday, myself and the other ward member, Councillor Tony Thomas, lead member Brian Jones, and Tony Ward from Ddinbych County Council and Wayne Hope met with the people from Arwellimore and with the Rhyl Golf Club, as it came to light that there are two plans in the offering. They haven't actually set out what the plans are, but if we take Plan A and Plan B, if Plan A was to go forward, Arwellimore want to place two transition joint boxes on two 20-metre by 5-metre concrete slabs in the middle of the Rhyl Golf course. This would be right across the 4th, the 5th and the 6th fairways. This would close Rhyl Golf Club. Rhyl Golf Club has been open for 130 years and one of the former founders of golf in North Wales. So I'm pleading on two counts here with your members that within the consultation that we press that the Arwellimore goes for Plan B, but we must state that the Plan B is that they drill from the other side of the Robin Hood camp, come under the Robin Hood, under the railway line, under the road, under the golf club, and under the new sea defences. And I must stress that the new sea defences may be a problem for them as well. So it's something else Ddinbych needs to take into account. When Gwynty Moor wind farm was put out there, we had no trouble with the Gwynty Moor from start to finish, and that's the way they did it. They drilled from the other side of the holiday park, right underneath the golf club. Very, very little disruption, and both parties were happy. If this Plan A goes ahead, it means the closure of Rhyl Golf Club. If I could just add one other thing, if all members please, before Monday, the 11th, which is the closing date of the consultation, just go on to the Rhyl Golf Club's website, and at the front page, it tells you everything about the meetings that they have with Arwellimore, but at the bottom of that page is a connection there to the consultation papers. And I stress, please members, if you could fill them in before Monday. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so those comments have been noted. I think the other local member is Tony Thomas, and I think he did mention that Councillor Brian Jones was going to speak on his behalf. So, Councillor Brian Jones.
Yeah, apologies, members. I seem to be hogging the meeting, but apologies on that. So Tony Thomas asked me to speak on his behalf. He's gone to Gabon today for a pre-op thing. And I agree, obviously what I'm going to say, I agree with it as well. I agree with the points that Councillor Barry Mellor's just made there. He did mention we were at a meeting with RWE earlier on. And I must say, up until that meeting, I was very supportive of RWE, spoken to quite a number of people who had concerns about the project in RHUTHUN, and beyond. And I did sit in one meeting with them where they explained the community benefits of this project. And that all sounded fandabidozy, a lot of community benefits. And they discussed with me the potential of investing money in Real Harbour as a park base for them. And that all sounded great. But after the meeting with the golf club recently, they went down in my estimations. And I told them so, and Barry will bear me out on this, and I was a bit aggressive with them, that they came across pretty arrogant. It's quite obvious that they virtually made their minds up on option A. They don't call it that. They were sort of a bit condescending, whacking out technical descriptions of what us laypersons know as option A and option B. I was extremely disappointed when I asked them the question, can you give me a budget indication of the cost difference between option A and option B? And the gentleman chairing it said, we haven't got that information. I sort of laughed at him and said, do us a favour, a project of this size, and you haven't got a handle on budget costs, and you can't tell us what the budget cost is between option A and option B. I chucked £10 million at him, and then he made a comment, well, actually, we have got a cost, but we don't want to discuss confidential information. So the demeanour of them, I think there was 5 of them on the meeting. At the moment, they are set on option A, and as Councillor Mellors pointed out, that will be the end of Real Golf Club. I fought for a long time, and I wasn't around when these flood defence projects started. But while I've been there as the lead member, and officers will bear this out, I have fought tooth and nail for Real Golf Club that they were given a fair hearing, they're giving fair audiences. We've recently sorted out in respect of Prestatyn flood defence scheme, if it goes ahead. We've worked out with Real Golf Club on how that could happen, that it wouldn't be too detrimental for them as a golf club, and that they could continue with minimum disruption, and all those little ducks were lined up. And then now we've got Aldermore coming along. I made that point to them. I also made another relevant point to them, that the way they're proceeding, the Prestatyn flood scheme, again, as Councillor Mellors mentioned, it's putting that at risk. And I made the point down the line, not if when a flood event occurs, because unfortunately when it occurs, they could be responsible indirectly for stopping a flood defence scheme going ahead that will affect 1,000 people when we get an event if we haven't put a sea defence in place. So our response to this consultation on 3.3 is it, where it refers to Real Golf Club, 3.5, we need in the strongest terms to point out to them they might be a big blue chip company, but there will be a strong feeling. Councillor Mellon's already mentioned Conway have got reservations, and that's been in the media, it's not secret. They have got big concerns about this as a project. So if they're not careful, and I did say it to them, they will build up a resistance. They might have legislation and everything else on their side, but don't make enemies of the local community. Probably over £10 million, I don't know, I haven't done the costing, but the gap between option A and option B, however big it is, because when they were selling to me the community benefits, it was millions of pounds. That's what they said, millions and millions of pounds for the community sums. So there's got to be a mechanism to support Real Golf Club here. So I'm obviously right behind it, and I'll fight and do whatever I can tooth and nail. And the arrogance, there was a bit of arrogance in that meeting, and I didn't like that, and I did tell them what I thought. So if you can take that on board, officers, definitely get it in there on the Real Golf Course point. And then some other points for our consultation to consider. Yeah, if the project does go ahead, they need to go a bit deeper on the community communication on where the actual tunnelling from the coast up to Bollywood will be. They need to be a little bit deeper on that communication with the people, residents, businesses that will be affected. And I don't think it's in their thinking. There is other future developments that are in the pipeline. Not necessarily that RWE will win the contracts, but somebody somewhere needs to have a bit of joined up thinking. If they're putting infrastructure in, if this project's going ahead, that there is some consideration for future projects so that we don't get disruption wherever it might be, Real Golf Club, in Rhuthun, in Fields at the back of Real South East. Someone needs to put some joined up thinking in place. Right, that's enough from me, Chair, I think.
That's great. No, that's I think officers have got all those comments. Have got a couple more speakers that we can bring in. I will bring in members of the committee first, and then I'll bring in Medic at the end. So I've got Councillor Julian Thompson-Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to follow on from what Barry and Brian have just said. I think we really do need to beef up the wording in connection with in section 3.4. I don't think we just have concerns regarding the impact. I think whatever form of words officers choose to come up with, I think we need to make it very clear that we would not be supporting any proposal which endangered the ongoing viability of what is, after all, a commercial premises. If they were proposing that they were going to put this in and knock down a couple of shops or something, we would be, we would be understandably up in arms, and there would be far greater thing. Just because it's a sporting facility, it is still a commercial operation, and they don't have the right to put us in a position where the viability of that business is essentially taken away. So I think we really do need to beef up those comments and say that anything that resulted in that would be totally unacceptable to this authority.
Okay. Yep. No, that's nice and clear. Thank you. And again, officers, I can see are writing down all these points. They were obviously happy to include all members' points on this. Councillor Bob Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Totally agree with what Julian said. Don't always agree with him, but on this one I have to. First of all, I'd like to ask Barry Miller, when they say closing down the golf club, do they mean they've closed it down because of loss of revenue, or are there going to be things poking up out of the ground that stops them from playing? I just want that clarified, please.
Okay. Barry, do you want to come back in, because you probably know best answer?
Yes, it'll be two ways. The longer this runs on, the more members they will lose. So obviously, the more members they lose, the less money will be coming into the club. But the biggest thing is the two transition jointing boxes, which will be two large concrete 20-metre by 5-metre concrete slabs that will go right in the middle of the golf course, and it will give them the right to go on there at any time to these concrete slabs to check the connection points of their cables. This will go concrete slabs right across the 4th, the 5th and the 6th fairways. It'll go right across the golf club. The golf club would have to close. You couldn't play golf on it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's nice and clear. So,
Thank you very much for that, Barry.
Yeah.
okay.
If I can add on to that, Chair, yeah, there was comments made at that meeting that we referred to with the golf club that the disruption time scale would be somewhere in the region of 5 years. That was the figure that was mentioned, or the time scale that was mentioned. The problem for the golf club is, if we're members of Real Golf Club today, the annual subscriptions are coming up, will stand corrected around about January. If we're listening on the sidelines to RWE and we're not getting positive waves, pardon the pun, golf course near to the beach, we're going to start looking elsewhere for membership, and that is going to affect the viability of Real Golf Club. RWE, when we asked them the question, when are you going to make a decision, they eventually spewed it out that it could be by the end of the year. They said January, Barry might want to correct me on that, January next year. Then they said December. So another point for our response as an authority, we need an answer from them quick. And for me, the answer is the point I made about the budget costs for A and B. They know what that is, yeah? If it's not to people like Councillor Mellor or Councillor Brian Jones, they need to put that on the table with Monsieur. And if it's £10 million, that can be worked round. I know it's a lot of money, but it can be worked round. And to safeguard the institution, which is Real Golf Club, it is a small price to pay. And for it, they'll probably get the support of a lot of people in Ddinbych, and obviously a lot of people in Prestatyn, if that flood defence scheme is stopped by what they're doing, because it will. If they go for option A, it'll stop the defence scheme, because the Prestatyn defence scheme is running around a timescale which is governed by Welsh Government grant funding. We've already had to go back to them to ask for a little bit of a concession, which I think without tempting fate we're going to get that, and so we don't want to jeopardise that project because RWE are playing the big boys as far as I'm concerned. I'm not their favourite anymore, and they're not mine. Thank you.
Okay, no, that's very clear. I think officers, provided nobody speaks against those comments that everyone has made, they can obviously be included in the Ddinbych report, but I'll bring in officers in a little bit if they need to come in. Let's see who else. So I've got Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I think I agree with all that's been said. I think what Brian and Barry have said, I agree totally and absolutely, and I do hope that when we make response to this company, that we make it in the strongest possible way that we could. I'm particularly disappointed with the company. They came and gave a presentation to the RHIL members. At this presentation, there was absolutely no dialogue about concrete aprons being put onto the fairways in the golf club. And they were particularly happy to say that they'd come up with this scheme that would bury all cables. They were very happy to say that that would save the golf club from closure. They were very happy to promote their scheme with no suggestion at all about anything that would impair the golf club or indeed its life. So I think if we could make whatever we put as in the most strongest way possible, I think there's been an arrogance here by the company coming to the RHIL members, telling them and reassuring them all the questions that we asked, all the answers that they gave us, and they skirted around, obviously now it's quite clear, they skirted around all the major issues which were anything to do with the cost, and certainly the burying, as they said, of all the cables. I am particularly disappointed as we did believe this company when they came to give the presentation, and I think that we should be making some representation to them as a county, saying that when they come to give a presentation, they have to be honest about the outcomes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I'll bring in Cynghorydd Emrys-Wyn and then Meidic, and then I'll bring in the officers if they have any comments on that.
Ie, diolch yn fawr iawn. Cytuno bob dim cytuno bob dim sy'n cael ei wneud yn hyn. Mae'r impact ar ardal yr arfordir yn union wrth ymyl rhwng y môr a'r tir yn sicr yn ystyriaethau clir iawn. Dylid ei herio yn sicr. Gai fynd ddod i mewn i'r nes i mewn i'r tir a dwi'n mynd i gyfeirio bod elwydda'n Rhyddlan ac ati, ac hefyd unrhyw le lle mae'r llwybr y ceblau yma i dilyn. Dwi'n edrych ar adran 3.9, mae'n bryder mawr gen i am yr impact y gall hwn gael ar llwybrau cyhoeddus a'r hawliau tramwyo sydd yn bodoli ar hyn o bryd. A bydd y sir nôl bob golwg os wedi darllen hwn yn gywir yn colli reolaeth ar hyn. A byddai'n gofyn i swyddogion edrych ar y 3.9 a cryfhau yn fwy os gwelwch yn dda y gwrthwynebiad i unrhyw bosibilrwydd bydd y llwybrau hyn yn mewn peryg o ddiflannu a bod golli defnydd arnyn nhw dros dro hyd yn oed am gyfnod maes. Bod eisiau cadw rheolaeth llawn arno gan y sir a nid i'r cwmni. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch. Cynghorydd Meidic Davies.
Diolch yn fawr, Mr Cadeirydd, ac fel un sydd wedi datgan diddordeb wrth reswm, eisiau tynnu sylw ac yn cefnogi y cwbl sydd wedi cael ei ddeud y gwir. Y treistrwch mwyaf ydy, da ni'n delio hefo cwmni a chefnogaeth llywodraeth tu ôl iddyn nhw yn aml iawn pe mae'n dod i achwiliad cynllunio. Dyna sy'n drist. Ond dyna fo, da ni wedi colli o blaen, gobeithio tro yma fyddwn ni'n ennill. Os newch chi edrych ar 144 yn yr adroddiad, 3.8, mae'r cwmnïau yma'n gwneud camgymeriad ofnadwy. Maen nhw'n galw o dan 3.8 bodelwyddan National Grid Substation. Wel, mae'n hollol anghywir achos mae'n cymeriadog. Tydi o'm yn o fewn bodelwyddan o gwbl. Felly mae hwnna gan gymeriad disgrifiadwy difrifol, dweud y gwir. Os da ni'n troi i'r cynlluniau, a dwi'n gweld hwn yn gais cymleth a chynhwysfawr. Mae'n anferthol, a dwi wedi bod yn trio wneud o ar y cyfrifiadur, a mae rhywun yn mynd ar goll yn lan, mae rhywun yn methu lawr lwytho'r cynlluniau. Dwi'n falch o weld y cyngor sir wedi gallu cael nhw'n gyfa, ond pen o'n i'n trio cael nhw, oedden nhw'n dod allan yn hanner llun, a'r llun ar y llall ac yn y blaen. Ond os newch chi droi at lle mae'r adroddiad gyn y swyddogion hefyd, chwarae teg, yn reit manwl, ond os newch chi droi tudalen 3 yn y wybodaeth gawson ni'n nisiwr ddwytha, Planning Public Protection Countryside Services ydi o, papur hwn, os da chi'n weld o, tudalen 3, Schedule 2 requirements ma'n dweud, requirement 7, a dwi'n yn gwybod lle mae hwnnw, oherwydd mae dibynnu pa ddogfen ydyn ni sôn amdano fo. Layout and scale of substation are proposed to be controlled by requirement. Details of appearance of substation building and boundary treatment should also be included in the reserved matters. A wedyn mae'n paragraff hir ar y dudalen nesaf, ynglyn â maint ac yn y blaen. Ond dwi methu dall ydw i fel cyngor sir bod ni'n caniatáu y fath adeilad, os newch chi edrych ar Google Map o'r safle, maen nhw'n rhoi allan, mae'n anferth o le. Mae o'n fwy bron na ydy parc busnes sydd yn y de yng Nghymeriadog rwan, lle mae'r gwaith ddiod cynt gan Gwynt y Môr, Burper Bank, a'r un sy'n allan i'r rheil i gyd wedi dod i Cymeriadog, a maen nhw tu ôl i'r de o'r parc busnes. Ond mae'r rhain am roi o ar dir gwyrdd, ddim tir brown, ddim byd i wneud efo'r parc busnes, achos mae rhy fawr beth bynnag, fas yn lle iddo fo. Mae ar gau gwyrdd, amaethyddol, feunol fawr, y feunol bropor, mae'n ddrwg yna. A dwi'n methu dall nad ydyn ni fel cyngor yn dod allan yn gry yn erbyn hwn, oherwydd mae'n hyllu a hagru Dyffryn Clwyd unwaith eto. Ac dwi'n meddwl ddylen nhw ail edrych ar hwn a gyrru'r cwbl i'r ceia lle fuodd y rhai cynt, a lle maen nhw rwan, deud y gwir, a lle mae'r cysylltiad yn mynd i fod. Mae rhaid nhw fynd i fanno hefo'r trydan yn y diwedd. Felly dwi'n gobeithio wneith y swyddogion anfon gair cry ar hwn ynglyn â y lleoliad. Dwi'n meddwl mae'n hefyd ar tudalen 4, Annex 3.1, ia, Cumulative Effect Assessment. A dwi'n meddwl bod hwnne eisiau gryfhau yn arw iawn. Mae'n dris gyfeillion oherwydd wedi ymladd rhai o blaen o claw newydd, o Cloceunog, mae'n ddrwg gynnau, maen nhw'n medru cerdded drostan ni, mae gennau ofn, a dwi'n cydymdeimlo'n fawr a pawb ar y glannau. Ac yn rhywle arall hefyd, reid y gwir, mae'r peth yn dris tu hwnt. Gawn ni obeithio, wneith y swyddogion cefnogi ni, ac fydd posib anfon gair cry i'r cwmni yma ynglyn â hyn, a bod yn aelodau seneddol ni hefyd yn cefnogi yn safiad ni. Mae hynny'n hanfodol bwysig efo math yma o gais, dwi'n teimlo. Diolch yn fawr iawn, parchus Gadeirydd.
Diolch, Meirik. Yeah, I think from me listening to all that, it's very, very clear the message that we're just sending to officers in order to sort of input that into the report that's already been written. But I'll just bring in Denise Shaw to clarify some of those comments. Okay.
Okay, yeah, first of all, thank you, everybody. That was really, really helpful. And I think the purpose of this report and bringing this here is we've got the technical inputs from officers that have had a chance to look at it. I'd also note there's a few responses pending as well from a couple of officers that haven't quite managed to finish their response. But yeah, this is a council response, and I think all the points raised are valid. The points with the impact of the golf course, we've talked about having the transition joint bays within the golf course. The other option, I think as members mentioned, is land to the south of the railway. So I think we want to really push that should be the option, and we strongly object to having those within the golf course. I think the other point to raise with the golf course is they're also proposing to have a temporary construction compound within the eastern section of the golf course, which is obviously going to impact on the golf course's functionality during the construction phase. So I don't know whether members want to make any observations on the siting of the construction compound as well. And again, I think we have picked up on the implications it's going to have for the Protestatin flood defences. So for those of you that aren't aware of that, it's a proposed coastal embankment that would go around the golf course, and it's an application's probably going to be coming in later this year for that. So that's something we definitely need to emphasise in our response. I think one of the other things to stress with the comments, we're obviously landowner, an affected landowner as well, and they are looking for compulsory acquisition powers as well to be included within the consent, as well as streetworks powers, which I think somebody mentioned about power to divert and stop up rights of way during the construction phase. So again, that sounds like something we want to kind of re-emphasise, that's something we're in objection to. I think with the cable corridor, again, that was issues about impact on footpaths and accesses and roads. We want to retain control of that. We don't want to have those powers embedded in that decision to take away powers from the Highway Authority to control those closures. And then I think on the point from Councillor Davis with respect to the substation, so the substation site that they've selected is to the west of St Asaph Business Park along Glasfryn Road. It's basically the fields opposite the crematorium, and they haven't at this stage defined how big the substation is going to be, but it would be between 30,000 square metres and 50,000 square metres. So it is huge. It's a huge substation. Infrastructure would be up to 18 metres in height. And they've selected this site because of its size primarily. A lot of other sites have been ruled out because of constraints. But yeah, there's absolutely no reason why we can't object to the selection of that site and ask that they revisit sites that are closer to the other substations or closer to existing kind of commercial developments rather than having it encroaching into the open countryside. That's completely valid point we could make in the response. What else? Yeah, I suppose the other thing I wanted to ask as well, we as a council with the other North Wales planning authorities commission consultants to look at the seascape, landscape and visual impact assessment, kind of focusing on the offshore elements of it and the impact on each of our kind of administrative areas and North Wales as a whole. And we met with the consultants last week with other authorities, and particularly Conway, Anglesey and Snowdonia are keen to submit kind of a joint response raising significant concerns with the proposal. So I'd also like to get a bit of a steer from members on that. The reason for that is not because we want to object to a wind farm, it's more to do with the size of the turbines that they're looking at, which are kind of 332 metres height, which are pretty much double the turbines in Gwyntamore. So again, I'd like to get a steer from members on whether or not you're happy for us to put the Ddinbych name to like a regional response as well.
Thank you. Okay, I think if I speak, and I'll bring Barry in just a second, unless anyone objects, then I think that we would be in agreement with Ddinbych putting their name to the North Wales objection about height. So if I say that on behalf of us, but obviously if people object to what I've just said, then come in. But I think we would be happy to put our names to that. And I would imagine, Barry, if you just come in on the golf course, I imagine you're going to say you want to object to anything that's going to potentially harm the future viability of the golf club, because as Brian was saying, you know, if you lose members, they don't then come back if somebody joins a different club because the club's closed, even if it's for a year, and they're likely to not come back, and it can be quite fragile, the viability of a golf club, because it does obviously rely on the membership fees. But anyway, I'll bring in Barry first.
Thank you for letting me come back, Chair. I'll stop my video. Just another couple of things to throw in the pan. I've been fighting since 2013, December 2013, when we had the horrific floods that took out over 140 houses on the East Ward of Rhyl. And Ddinbych and its officers have worked hard with Welsh Government to get the funding, to get these flood defences here today. Yesterday we was on amber alert. If those flood defences hadn't been there, we'd have had trouble again at that point. The officers at Ddinbych have been working with the rugby club, as myself, Brian and Tony. And even now, with the new central Prestatyn flood defences, we'll take in work that has to take place on the Rhyl Golf Club. There's been compensation paid to the Rhyl Golf Club from Ddinbych County Council. That's ratepayers' money. And if this club has to fold, then after spending ratepayers' money to keep it open around the flood defences, there'll be murder to play. So I think it's vital that we really get a grip of this and say we're not accepting Plan A. It's not about just losing the players. These concrete slabs across the golf course will not allow them to play anyway. The compound, I forgot the lass's name, who's just spoken, very sorry. We're talking about Denise, sorry. Denise. The compound, I think, again, is a real big problem for the golf club. And I think we should really stress that point. And I do agree with what you've just said, and Joe, that a combined DCC, Conway and Anglesey would go a long way to show the depth of feeling against their proposals. Not against, you know, with climate change and whatever, but it's the way the proposals are coming at us. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Jones.
Thanks again, Chair. And that leads in nice for probably my final comment, that within the response, I think we should acknowledge, and it touches on what Paris just said there, that we recognise as an authority, and hopefully as members, that there is a place for wind generated power. Yeah, in the big scheme of things, there's definitely a place for it. So that I'd like to propose that we put in that response that we acknowledge that, but we need them to come and play the game with us and recognise what our concerns are, so that we recognise that wind power has got a big part to play in renewables. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point to be able to add in. And Councillor Mark Young.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Whoever thought in modern times we'd have democracy removed from us in this way? The more you read the document, the more scary it is. So the comment that they don't need any consents from the planning authority or the local flood authority, I find that astonishing. So can I just ask legally of our legal officer? Obviously, we're here to keep our residents safe. So surely there's some powers we have. If they're interfering with our flood defence scheme, surely we have powers which would give us some power to stand up to this, because in its present format, we can't accept it. And then on the last bit, it does say that we would be in control of the enforcement and planning requirements. So can that be explained to me, please? Because that seems a contradiction. And then lastly, there is some impact assessments, and it talks about economics, public health, tourism and recreation, just to make sure that our offices, even though we're going to go regional, are we picking up our thoughts on that? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just bring in the officers on those couple of points.
I think I might leave it to the legal officer to talk about the various powers that they're seeking to include within the consent. I'd point out that it's not a planning permission that they get. It is a statutory instrument. It's in its own right. It would be a development consent order, which is why they can get all the powers kind of devolved to them through the consent process. In terms of the requirements and the enforcement, the requirements are planning conditions in all but name, basically. So after a decision's been made, it would be for the relevant local planning authority to then approve details subject to the requirements in the same way we do with the planning conditions. So we can try and influence the wording of the requirements to try and make sure we've got sufficient controls in there. But again, it would only be control of detailing, not necessarily, you know, the bigger picture. And I think with the substation, I think they're proposing to have appearance and design and things like that left to condition. But I think you're right, it should all be upfront. We need to know what's actually getting assessed. And again, enforcement, if they're in breach of the requirements in the same way as if they're in a breach of condition, it would be for Ddinbych as the planning authority to investigate and enforce.
Yeah, so my point is, Chair, just quickly on that is, someone else shouldn't be interfering with our design of flood defences. So when the officer says we can try and do the wording, that's not right when we're protecting our residents with flood defences and local businesses, etc. So clarification on that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so Tim Dillon, legal officer, do you want to come in on whether you know?
Thank you, Chair.
Powers we have on that? Thanks.
So in relation, yeah, thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the legal powers in respect to flood defence, etc., and its interplay with this situation, that is something that I would have to look at specifically and give it some further consideration. But I can look at that shortly.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, that's fine. So I think officers have got a very clear steer from members. I'll just bring in Paul Me just to wrap it up, and then I think we can sort of go for an informal vote on it, but we'll just need to get some members voting on it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it was just to thank members really for their input today. I think it's really valuable. Obviously, Denise, fair play to her as trying to coordinate all of this, and it's not an easy task because there are some huge documents floating around, and it is complicated. I think we, as a planning committee and as members, you've stated quite clearly there that the bigger picture around climate change and the use of wind power for renewable energy is in principle accepted. You know, I think clearly that's why these proposals get these sorts of powers, don't they? Because ultimately what the government is trying to do is trying to facilitate a quicker solution as possible to the climate change issue. So
I guess that what we've got to do at this stage, which again I need to re-emphasise, it is a pre-planning application stage. We're submitting our comments to this sort of pre-consultation on it, and I think we've got quite a bit to go on there. I think we've made detailed notes as officers around the points that have been made. We hear what members are saying there about strengthening the wording of certain things around certainly the golf club, and certainly around some of the other cable routing, etc., and the implications of the substation, and looking at different sites. We will also listen to members there in relation to your agreement to join forces with our other neighbouring authorities in terms of some of the comments on the height of the actual offshore turbine. So I think this has been a really helpful exercise in getting your feedback there. I think what the final thing that I just wanted to say is that when it does come to the application and the process that we have there, clearly we've got another opportunity to input into the eventual decision making on a lot of this. And I think Councillor Mellor has also emphasised around individual members' opportunities to submit detailed comments as well. We've got a voice as a planning committee and as a council, but you know that there is the opportunity. It's democracy. People will have an opportunity to submit their comments direct within this process as well. So I think it's really important if members have got particular feeling about a particular issue in their area, write yourselves. You're the elected members. Make sure that your voice is heard. So yeah, we've made detailed notes, and hopefully we'll be able to pack something off to this consultation by next Monday. It's a lot of work that we need to do between now and then. And I think, sorry, Janice just wants to come back in on a particular point. I'll pass back to Denise.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what's the best mechanism for us to agree the final response before we submit it? Is it okay to just agree it with the chair, or just individual members want to see it before it goes out?
I think, yeah, I was just thinking of this as we were saying it, because we obviously do just need to approve it. I think if it's shared between the chair and then the local members, if Barry and then it will be Tony, but if Brian's happy with that, if other members are happy with that, I think if it goes around too many people, then obviously it will be delayed, because it's, I mean, if we do possibly want to write in the consultation as well, that it's a ridiculously short time frame to have this. This is why it is all such a rush. I mean, it came in on the 31st of August, and we're trying to get it out by the 11th of October. So I think it's very, very clear what happened. Brian, have you got your hand up still?
Yeah. Again, yeah. Is it appropriate that a covering letter from the chief executive flies in with that as well, just to hammer the point home and to elevate it up another notch, if you like, if he would be amenable to that? It surely won't do any harm. It's whether it's appropriate or not. Letter from
we can certainly ask the chief executive for that. Meirik, very quickly, please.
Sydyn iawn, os gai gopi, fyswn ni yn ddiolchgar gan bod i eisiau cael gweld sut allai gefnogi y sir hefyd yn y cyswllt yma.
Okay, yeah, and then obviously all members will be able to see it next week as well. So, okay, do we need a proposer and a seconder for this one? Yeah, so if we have a proposer to say that we're happy to seek to approve us to submit a formal consultation response to the pre-application consultation on behalf of the council, with the condition that it's just going to be the final document will be approved by the chair and the local members.
I'll propose it.
Obviously, Cynghorydd Meirik Davies has an interest with the substation, so that's where the local member will come in for that. So if you have a proposer for that, please.
I can do that, yeah, for a second.
Okay, I think that was Councillor Brian Jones, and I'm pretty sure I heard Mark Young's voice in there for seconding it. So that's been proposed and seconded. I don't think we need to go through each individual member's name for this one. So what we'll do is, if you are in agreement, stay silent, and if you are against what we've just proposed, then if you speak out in the next couple of seconds. Okay, so I think that was unanimous that we're all happy with that to move forward. Okay, so we do have one more item left. Oh, yeah, so Councillor Tina Jones, if you just leave the meeting now before I start this one.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Tina. Okay. So what we have here is agenda item number 9 on page 171. This is the Denbighshire Local Development Plan 2006 to 2021. It's the draft annual monitoring report. And if we just go through it, okay, this is obviously what comes to us each year. And it's to report the progress, and it's that members note. So we don't need to be, there's no formal votes on this one. It's just to note the content of the annual monitoring report 2021. So the lead member is Councillor Mark Young, and the report author is Carsten Brusk, who is here. So who wants to come in first on this one, just to introduce it?
Yeah, I just introduced Carsten. Obviously, as you say, Chair, this comes to us annually. It's been to SPG, so it's had a good debate on there, and members will see via their mags all that paperwork. And without further ado, I'll invite Carsten. Diolch yn fawr, Carsten.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much to the lead member. Good afternoon, members. The item is coming as an information item for you. So if you have any queries, I would appreciate getting back to officers within the next 7 days, so we can finalize the report for publication on the website and submission to Welsh Government by the end of the month. Diolch.
Okay, so as it is just for a noting one, unless anyone has anything specific to say, so I think, Councillor Brian Jones, yeah.
Yeah, the key strategic site in the report there, it says that the planning permission, the outland planning permission is expired. So what's the next step with that? Does that, it reads like that's gone down the pan, we've got no strategic site anymore?
Okay, Carsten, do you want to?
Okay, yeah, the planning application has been lapsed. The site designation remains in the current adopted LDP, and officers will discuss with members of the strategic planning group how to take forward any future proposal for Bodelwydden in any form, or whether there is any development. So we will come back with detailed information and justification or proposal in which direction to go on Bodelwydden in the near future.
Okay.
So presumably the whole membership will have a say on whether it goes or whether it doesn't then. Is that correct?
It will be maybe not on Bodelwydden in itself, depending how officers propose to go forward. It will be when it goes towards submitting the plan for examination, where members then can either say, yes, we approve the plan, we wanted to have examined in public at this stage or not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Medic, ti eisiau dod I mewn?
Jyst yn sydyn, diolch eto. Mae yna lythyr yn does ar tudalen 193 gan Julie James. Fatha'r swyddog yn hoffi, dwi ddim yn glir, mae'n deud bod yr mestyn amser y cynllun da ni wrthi'n gweithio arno fo rŵan, ond dwi'n yn weld o'n hollol glir ynglyn â'r hen un, yr un da ni, wel mae o'n gorffen, flwyddyn yma os dwi'n cofio'n iawn, 21. Ydy hwnnw'n dal I fod o ran adeiladu o'r newydd yn y sir, tan ddaw y llall I fod, neu ydyn ni'n colli hwnnw a fy'n le gwag wedyn ynglyn â cynllun lleol I godi tai yn lleol. Diolch yn fawr.
Okay, Chair, can I come back on that, please?
Yep.
Yeah, so as discussed in SPG, and the same question was raised, and it rolls over till the new one's in place. And just going back on Councillor Brian Jones's point, the other one, all the sites and the status will go to the local mags for input, and obviously their thoughts will be taken on board. So we are going to be going round to each mag for each area. So that will be picked up, and all of this has to be signed off by full council also as part of the process. Diolch yn fawr.
Joan Butterfield, Councillor Joan Butterfield.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask Carsten if we have to take into consideration in the future on new plans and the plans that are being extended, the new committees, the CJCs, and I wonder, have we to take those into consideration in the local development plan in the future, or will they be taking over from the local authority in taking on that role for the plan in the future years? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carsten, do you have an answer for that?
So quick, the abbreviation you used, CJC, can you just...
Yeah, it's the Corporate Joint Committee.
Okay. So just that we talk about the same thing. There will be in the future a strategic development plan in North Wales, which will sit in a hierarchy of plans above the Ddinbych local development plan, but we do not anticipate that there will be a strategic plan in the next 5 to 6 years. So for us as officers and members of Ddinbych County Council, it's important to progress the replacement LDP, so we have a strong position when it actually comes to the strategic plan and the CJC starting their work. So we have the evidence base and can give them a steer where we as the council would like to go forward. Because when they start preparing the plan, they cannot just disregard our local view. So the earlier we get an adopted plan, the better for the council when going forward, looking at preparing strategic development plans.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Kirsten.
Okay. So again, if there's anything in the next 7 days, if you can get that directly to Carsten, and then that would be great. So that ends that agenda item. So the very last thing today is just on the very end of the late reps sheet. There's a late item, and it's just a member update on application 47-2020-0593. And it's the location, it's the former Rill Rugby Club on Wine Road, Rhuthun Rill. And there's just some officer notes on it because obviously members, if I just read it out, members will recall that the above planning application was deferred by planning committee to allow time for Welsh ministers to consider whether to call the application in for determination by ministers. And the Welsh Government have decided to call in the planning application for determination by Welsh ministers. Therefore, it's been referred to Welsh ministers and they'll be responsible for determining it. So we've just had, or Paul's had a letter just outlining that. So it's just a little bit of information. And it says at this time, officers are waiting for the Welsh Government to determine if the application is to be determined through the written representations process or through a hearing. So that's just literally information there. There's no point having any discussion on it because we're just going to await further information from that. Okay, so that's that. Right, that's the end of the meeting. So have a lovely rest of the day. Next month.
Well done, Chair. Thank you.
Well done, Chair. Goodbye, everybody.